right. Cool. Good morning. Yeah, good that you all recovered from the party, I guess. Yeah, I'm Lukas. I'm from Safe. Maybe you're wondering what's Safe. We used to be called Gnosis Safe. We're currently going through like a little bit of like an identity crisis. Reason being, we spun out of Gnosis. Gnosis is now solely going to be Gnosis chain, and we want to kind of prevent this confusion, like I'm building on Gnosis, what I'm actually building on is Gnosis Safe, Gnosis chain, blah, blah. So yeah, the best we could come up with is just keep out the Gnosis for now. Let's see. I mean, we're techies, we're not branding geniuses. That's the best we could do. So yeah, we just run with it. I'm going to talk a bit about ownership. It's an important topic for Web3. And actually a little bit about kind of the past, the history of ownership, because ownership is really kind of this important kind of social primitive that we have that really enables us to transact, to interact with each other, to coordinate value, to really have economies. And it's not kind of like there's just one type of ownership. This is like a problem that has been with humans since ages. This is like 5,000 years ago, how people kind of signaled and showed ownership in kind of cattle branding. By the way, that's also where the term brand is actually coming from kind of showing this cattle belongs to me, I have ownership over this, and like every family had their own brand, which they kind of burned into the cattle. But that's how we kind of signaled ownership in the past. And there's kind of like different frameworks you can use to first kind of define ownership, to kind of signal to other people that you interact with, like what do you own, like who owns certain assets, whether tangible or intangible, but also how this ownership is then enforced, how you can kind of use it to coordinate. So three major frameworks that we use as humans is kind of the physical ownership, so me having kind of physical possession over a thing, over an asset, and this kind of giving me the rights, the titles over this asset. You might think this is kind of an antique way to define ownership, but unfortunately still today some nation states think that just kind of having physical possession over some land actually grants you the ownership and the rights for it. So it's kind of still used by humans to kind of signal ownership and to enforce it just by have the right of the stronger, the might is right kind of perspective. But then there's also kind of like a social way to own things. So having social contracts with each other, or kind of a social framework where this really allows me then to not just do bargaining with each other, which is kind of what you do when you just rely on physical ownership. So I have this asset, you have this asset, let's just switch. But this enables even more coordination on value. Like I can give you something and I know you give it back to me because I'm the owner, you know I'm the owner, and if you wouldn't give it back to me, we kind of have some problem there, and like our kind of social contract doesn't work out. That's also why it's possible for us to someone pays for someone else's food, and next time they pay back, kind of this reciprocity of like just having value being defined through kind of social bonds. And if you kind of conflict with these, the enforcement would be just kind of exclusion from this like community or from this social circle. And kind of the one ownership which probably most people are thinking of if they hear about ownership is like the legal aspect or the legal perspective, which is like we define whether in whatever form, verbally, in writing, the ownership and like how certain titles to different assets are defined and distributed. And this is really how as we as kind of humans and as society scaled, we became more global. We interacted with more people that we don't necessarily know who they are or like have kind of a social bond with them, and that's how we were able to scale by having this framework of like legal ownership that allow us to interact with people that might be across the country, even across the globe, and have kind of this certainty that allows us to do transactions, to have an economy together. So kind of these frameworks became increasingly trustless and increasingly scalable, just as we as a society did. And now we're kind of in this new paradigm, in this like digital environment, which kind of goes even further. It's even more global, it's even more fast-paced. There's assets that can be created at the click of a button. Like you interact with people, you don't even know if they are human or not. So you have everything kind of put to an extreme. So yeah, kind of you don't know kind of the party that's on the other side, especially for us in like Web3. This is also the case where kind of being anon is even like something you should kind of strive towards. So yeah, we need some new framework there to define ownership that kind of goes with the time, because how so far in a digital environment we defined ownership was we relied on this legal contract aspect. And this is not really scalable if you kind of do peer-to-peer. You don't want to kind of set up like have a legal framework with everyone you're interacting with. If you're doing like thousands of like microtransactions per day and like interacting with people, you don't know who's on the other end. So we kind of relied on these intermediaries, these middlemen that we just had like a legal relationship with that kind of handled these transactions between parties. But this kind of is not native to the internet. It's not how kind of the internet is built up to be, which is really kind of this decentralized peer-to-peer way to interact with other people. And that's where we then came to like smart contract blockchain, a way to define ownership in a way that doesn't rely on like a legal framework or doesn't rely on like any intermediary. And by the way, these things also aren't mutually exclusive. So obviously they are coexisting, and I also think that smart contracts and legal contracts have a way to kind of integrate with each other, but they're definitely taking or filling a hole in this digital environment. And here really the enforcement mechanism is the code. It's how in the end these contracts are getting executed. And this just is a new kind of ownership framework, which is even more trustless and scalable and kind of digital native. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about kind of ownership in Web3 and how people are being made from being a user of a platform to actually being an owner and kind of taking back ownership over your data and identities and assets. And I'm a big fan of kind of the narrative of Variant with kind of this ownership economy and this really being what makes Web3, what's this new generation of the internet. But we do have a problem that we have all these ways to define these coordination mechanisms in like marketplaces and AMMs and everything, and kind of define the ownership on that side. But on the other side, there's still kind of this single private key, which is the access to your account, which then you do all the transactions with. And this reminds me a little bit of like this kind of physical possession, where it's really the kind of whoever has access to this private key kind of inherits the rights to the assets on your account. So it's like, just taking away someone's car and suddenly being the owner of it, which obviously it's the conflict with kind of the legal perspective of it, but it's kind of how the systems work today. So users really have this kind of dilemma here, whether they want to take care of the private key management themselves and getting wrecked, or whether they want to rely on a custodian and getting wrecked. So that's where we are right now. I mean, a little bit put to the extreme, but we really need to kind of fix also this side of the equation, where these single private keys should also be replaced by code and enable more flexible ways to manage these accounts. And that's what Safe is about. Most people know Safe as a way to do multisig, meaning I can have multiple keys that control my account. I can have threshold. I can have my co-founders and myself kind of be together managing this account. But really, it's so much more, because it's essentially a way to program your account into any kind of access control scheme you want it to be, and really fit to your use cases. And yeah, if you take one thing from today, I would just say this should be it, that Gnosis Safe is much more than just, yeah, will take some time to get used to this Gnosis kind of thing. Yeah, Safe is much more than just multisig. That's the tip of the iceberg, but there's kind of many more ways how you can program your account, whether it's doing like token voting. That's what you can do right now by saying a snapshot space should control my safe. It can be spending limits, where you can say you have a multisig, but some like party, external party, internal party can have a budget every month, every week, and they don't require the confirmations from other people. They can just use assets on your account. It can be hybrid custody, so you can work together with a custodian and share the responsibility to an account to kind of safekeep the assets in a hybrid custodial way. You can do recovery mechanisms, whether that's social recovery, whether that's like a third-party custodian that's acting as a recoverer. You can implement hierarchies, so you might have different roles within an organization that have different access rights. You have ways to restrict the capabilities of your account. We can say your safe is only enabled to interact with these types of protocols, or it's not allowed to interact with these addresses that are somehow related to some malicious activity or something like that. So you can do all these nice things. And that really enables us this kind of programmable way to define your account. This enables new ways to coordinate value, like Constitution DAO, which kind of emerged in a few weeks, and they just coordinated a bunch of people together that let's buy this constitution. They failed, but was a good try. And kind of that shows you how this new way to define ownership is much more scalable and trustless, because it was people that didn't know each other, they didn't set up a legal contract how to manage these assets, but they just had, they actually used Safe as a way to also define who has what rights over the assets, and they just shared this treasury or these assets to say we're going to invest this into the constitution, and then it didn't work out, and they had other ways to manage these assets. Similar thing also happened with Ukraine DAO, where overnight a group of people came together. They coordinated assets, invested them in different ways to support the situation in Ukraine. Now the most recent one is a group of people trying to buy a dinosaur. Why not? Yeah, also cool a project that's building on Safe is Prism. They do, yeah, I mean, many NFTs just became way too expensive for one person to afford. So they want to enable a group of people to come together and say, let's buy together a CryptoPunk. I couldn't afford it, you couldn't afford it, but together we could, maybe. And yeah, they're also using Safe to kind of do this coordination, and these people, again, you wouldn't need to know who's on the other party, because the rights over these assets are enforced by code. Everyone can see them. Things are clear from the beginning. Yeah, can be, yeah. Also, Radical is interesting. Also built on Safe. They allow you to own code repositories in a decentralized way with some people that might be unknown people online, but you still want to share the responsibility of like the code ownership, especially interesting for DAOs that want to yeah, just kind of say, own these repositories. And then maybe a little bit kind of forward-looking, what potential Safe is still going to unfold. One interesting thing for me is in the NFT space, where a single asset might have like many different rights or titles, and you don't necessarily want to give away the asset in order to allow someone to use these titles, or you want to have the asset super secure in a very secure setup, but you might want to use it on a regular basis to get entrance to an event, to log into a game without losing the security that you initially had. So their safe is going to play a role in like allowing to keep your CryptoPunk secure, but still use it for certain activities in a way that you can just delegate these rights to other parties or to other accounts that are more easily, like a software wallet, more easily accessible to you. Where they're talking to some teams that are looking to implement that. Also, I mentioned hybrid custody. For me, a field that has a lot of potential. Like most users probably in the future, they don't want to take care of the full key management themselves. They might want to have the benefits of self-custody. So being able to do whatever you want with your assets, to not being locked into some platform, but they don't necessarily want to have the risks associated with it. So you might think of solutions that have you being the owner of a safe, but have another third party being able to recover access if you lose your keys, for example, or you have a partnership with an insurance. They might say you can do transactions as you want, but if it's a transaction that we didn't agree with, we don't insure it. So you can just choose yourself, you want to be risk-taking or not. And if it's so, the insurance always kind of gives the sign-off for each transaction, kind of like multi-sig, so another signature. But if they say this is something we cannot estimate the risk with, it kind of is kind of on-chain provable that we didn't agree with it. So like there's different ways how kind of you can play together with external parties and share responsibility, or just have a more sophisticated setup. Then, I mean, that's the last slide already. Maybe the second takeaway next to Safe not being just multi-sig is that Safe is also not just a product. We do have a UI that we built as the core team, a web interface and a mobile app, but really what we're after is to build this ecosystem that's leveraging the Safe protocol. Our mission is that at some point every transaction is made from a smart contract account. That's like a long-term vision of like many also Ethereum core developers, that every account on Ethereum should be a smart contract account, like account abstraction and such. And we think that there needs to be someone that's really pushing this in a like coordinated way, and that's building an ecosystem as there's clearly network effects and like building up this around one shared protocol, because there's like developer tooling emerging, infrastructure emerging, just shared standards emerging. And if this is not somehow coordinated, this won't probably ever happen. And for us to really get to a more secure and more accessible Web3, we think smart contract account adoption is crucial. So we have 30 plus teams that are building on Safe right now. And this was very organically emerged, so we didn't do too much business development or like ecosystem development so far from our side, but kind of that shows already that there's this fire already starting to burn, and now it's just for us to kind of keep it going and to help this team. So Safe is really an ecosystem where we're supporting other teams. We're kind of sparking some fires here and there. So if you have some idea how we can leverage this primitive of like a programmable account, comes to speak to me. If you want to get in touch with any of these teams, let me know. Or anything else, you can either ask now or after. Thank you.
Hello. So as a part of this rebranding, from Gnosis Safe to Safe, have you also deployed like a new set of smart contracts? And if yes, like what are the things we can do with Safe now, which we could not do, with Gnosis Safe earlier?
So no, we didn't deploy a new set of smart contracts so far. And so the rebranding didn't really have an effect in that sense. It was really just that there was like some brand confusion around. And we are aware that like Safe is like the worst thing to do for like search engine optimization, and like there's this Scrum framework, and like there's a lot of issues with it, but like what should we do?
And one follow-up question, like is are safe, smart contract account abstraction compatible, with this EIP 4337?
Yeah, so there's been like many different ways how account abstraction was proposed in the past. The newest iteration of the EIP, we have some internal prototypes, and we're kind of exploring the ways to do that. Richard, I don't know if he's in the back, he's probably the expert to talk to, our tech lead. Yeah, but this is definitely something we're keeping an eye on and trying to see how we can fit together with these proposals.
Thank you.
While out here, I'll take advantage of that. I'm working on the BLS wallet project, which is, like I spoke with Gnosis a little while ago about integrating that, because we're looking at 4337 as well. We're working with them in defining that. So the contracts for that are getting audited. This was, again, part of the EF's project. So I'll continue the conversation. Was it Richard at the back?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll reach out again. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey man, love Safe, love your work, thanks for what you're doing. Recently you raised quite a bit of funding. I was wondering if you were preparing any grants program for people willing to build, integrate, safe, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I actually forgot to mention that. Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal. We did raise the money, 100 million, not because we want to sustain ourselves for the next 50 years. We want to invest this back into the ecosystem. This is going to be through like bounties, grants, maybe also in investments. We need to kind of set up now the processes and structures, like what can we do, how should it work. So we'll take some time, maybe Q3, Q4, where there's like some more information on that, but this is really the goal. Like the majority of the funds we raise is going back into the ecosystem.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.